I'm David Hunt, and welcome to The Art Hunter. Now let's talk about heavy metals. Heavy metal and Opera Australia? What am I talking about? Have I gone, is there something wrong? Am I making a mistake? Have we got the right interview happening? All right, let's continue and see where we go with this. Oh, am I right? No, come on, let's keep on going. My guest today is Indian-born tenor with Opera Australia, whose musical career, moving here to Australia, he got involved in heavy metal, and Def Leppard was his favourite band, whatever. He is an amazing singer. He debuted with Opera Australia in 2014, becoming their first Indian-born performer. Incredible, just that alone. He has just finished a show, and it's just over my shoulder, where it's the story of Gandhi, and he actually plays it. Got rave reviews, everyone's been talking about it. He's got a national tour coming up with the Barber of Seville. I love that opera, it's amazing. Let's meet him. Hello.
Hello, David, how are you?
Very well. Now, tell us, what's this heavy metal thing? You moved to Australia and you got interested in heavy metal music?
Well, I think I was interested in heavy metal in India, to be honest.
Okay. Did you hear much about it in India, heavy metal?
Well, my entry into Western music was actually through Michael Jackson. Because Michael Jackson was like the only accessible Western artist in all of India, right? And I loved him to death, man. I had posters and I had all his cassettes going back,
Yeah.
Everything arranged by year, and then the album, and then the alphabetically and all of that. So I was a big fan.
Could you moonwalk? Could you do it?
Well, I tried. I'm okay at it, I guess. Hopefully there's a chance to do it in an opera sometime.
Hey!
I nearly tried it in Viaggio, Reims, but that's another story. There was Michael Jackson, and then as I grew older, I was like, I think my mind wants something a bit heavier. Right, so, and a friend of mine out of the blue gave me Def Leppard's Vault, the greatest hits CD, and I heard the first few bars of Action, the song, the very first song on the album. I was like, this is not bad, it's not bad. And then the drums come in and they were huge. And from then on, I was, Def Leppard led to Iron Maiden led to Metallica, and then, around that time I moved to Australia, and then it was like, I think I'd like to be in a rock and roll band,
Yeah.
Why not? Because it was music has always been such a big part of me. Even growing up in school, people had to tell me to shut up because I would be singing all the time and annoying everybody.
Fantastic. So you toured a little bit in heavy metal bands, is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
So when did it happen that all of a sudden you got involved with opera? As a tenor. That's worlds apart.
Yes, I mean, on the surface it seems very different, but for singing-wise, it's not all that. It's not all that diverse, I guess. I mean, we're along the same lines because we're still producing sound, and I always give this analogy: like heavy metal is like T20 cricket, and opera is like the full-on 5-day test match.
Oh, right. That's a very Indian quote as well, isn't it? The love of cricket in India. But, wouldn't you have had to do a lot of study and languages as well? Because opera is sung in multiple languages.
That's right. And, I'm lucky in that way, like being born in India, most people are bilingual by birth.
Oh, okay.
So I spoke Hindi at home and English in the school.
Yeah.
And then we also had to take a third language in school, and I chose Sanskrit as my third language because Sanskrit is very important in my family, and we had.
Why? Why? Tell me why.
It's because without going into the caste system and all of that, I come from a family of pandits, which are the Brahmins, and so for us, we had lots of what they call puja, which is just having havans and yajna at home, which is around a fire, and you have priests come and chant things in Sanskrit for the purification of the atmosphere.
Whoa.
And your home and your family and things like that. And I wanted to know what it was all about.
Yeah.
And we had traveling saints would come to our home and give us blessings, and we had a question and answer session with them as to why are things the way they are. I mean, Hinduism is, going a bit off tangent here.
No, not at all. This is interesting.
Hinduism is one of those religions where when God comes to earth, you are encouraged to ask questions.
Okay.
As opposed to just taking their word for it.
Okay. I love that. I love that.
They can range from anything.
Yeah.
From caste, color, creed, sex, sexuality, all of that. Because we are all human beings on earth experiencing the same thing, but we interpret them in different ways. So if you have a guidebook, so if somebody like, God, I suppose, comes down and is telling you what to do, you can ask them questions. Why is this the way it is?
Yeah, yeah.
And that line of inquiry is something that is fundamental in Hinduism, which is why the official term for Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma, which means the never-ending faith.
Wow. We got off topic, but thank you for that. I found that absolutely fascinating. How did you get involved with Opera Australia?
Ah, yes, coming back to that.
Remember, that's how we started with it. And this will happen because I changed the topic a lot.
No, it's my fault as well, guys. It's just, we'll be going off tangent all the time. So there was a distinct moment where we were writing our second album, and I was just browsing YouTube one day, and this guy called Luciano Pavarotti came on.
I've heard of him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Came on stage, and he was singing this thing called Nessun Dorma. And I was like, oh my God, what an amazing tune. I got to research it. But while I was researching it, the voice kept soaring and soaring and soaring and built up to this amazing climax. And for the large part of my singing career, I've been self-taught. So and all I've done basically is listen to people like Robert Plant and, Michael Jackson and Bruce Dickinson, and just try to imitate them to get a certain color in the sound.
Yeah.
And I heard Pavarotti was like, I want to learn how to do that. And the more I tried it, the more I was like, oh, it's not quite there. Because there was a different approach to the sound. The sound was very complete. It was not affected in any way. It was just his soul pouring out. So,
and a lot of emotion.
Totally.
As well. Yeah.
It's Italian opera, you can't do anything without emotion. Yeah. It's a very beautiful and complete expression for emotion.
Yep.
So I was like, and suddenly the band decided we're gonna fold up in 2012, and that's when I thought, you know what, I think I want to be an opera singer now. And luckily, I was a tenor, and even though I was singing stuff that was probably half an octave higher than what most operas are written in. Thankfully, all of that solidified technique to some degree. And then when I moved to Melbourne, I met a person called Cosimo Ciccone, who ran the Ciccone Academy here. And I met him through the pop world. And he's a baritone himself. And slowly we worked to get more colors in the sound. And then I worked with a coach at Opera Australia called John Haddock, who sadly is no longer with us. Mm-hmm. And he was and is my guru, who taught me how to read music and everything as well.
Right.
Sorry.
But also the breathing with opera as well, and the no microphones.
Yes.
Which like that whole like projecting your voice. Did you find that difficult, or did it come fairly natural?
So that was the transition from T20 to the test match.
Yes.
Yes. So the stamina is something that, or what I like to call the legato. The legato means the smoothness of sound, the smoothness of delivery. And rock and roll is very hard hitting. You basically headbang your life away, why wouldn't you? But opera is more of a slow burn, and you have to embrace that. And coming from rock and roll, that was the hardest thing for me.
Yep.
Because there was so much energy in a live show, and then suddenly in an opera you have to stand still and mean something that is so deeply moving to you, to be able to communicate to the audience who are there listening, but you have to be convincing,
Yep, and your facial expression, your hand movements.
All of that.
Yeah. So here you are, and you all of a sudden start getting work with Opera Australia. Did you find it intimidating to begin with, coming from as an outsider, where most other people that you'd be working with would have been trained all there, since they're 16, 17?
Oh yeah, massively. Because I wasn't the best musician per se, you know. I really, even now, I feel music more than I, you know, read it on a page, I guess, you know. I try to find what the chord structure or what the orchestration is trying to tell me, and then I try and respond to that. But there are times when, you know, technical knowledge of musical terms and all of that has great value, especially in the classical business, because the composers wrote based on that framework.
Yep.
And I've gotten better at it, you know, look, you have to. And all of that is valid. So in the beginning, I was, it was very intimidating to, you know, for people to say, oh, here's a crotchet, here's a quaver, and here's a minimum. Like, oh, is it a quarter note, half note, full note? I don't know. Because I learned the American system for better or worse. And so just interpreting all of that, and then also doing the staging, also doing the singing while following the conductor. You have to juggle quite a few things. But hey, that's what the life of an opera singer is.
Yeah. First opera with Opera Australia was what?
La Cenerentola.
Hey, a small one to get involved in. Wow, fantastic. And were you just part of the chorus?
No, we were doing the Victorian Schools tour. So
Right.
I auditioned for Opera Australia on a whim in 2014. I was like, I'm not going to get anywhere. I just go up there and sing, and I sang A Mes Amis, which is an aria that is famous for having 9 high Cs consecutively in very quick succession. And I had a job 2 days later for a tour for 3 months. And the thing was, they were already on tour. And so they fit me in to be the tenor for the tour. And that was my first taste. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good.
Wow. And how many operas have you done now?
I have no idea. I mean, there are not that many.
Looking around all the imagery that's around us, there's a few.
Well, I mean, I suppose in the space of time that I've been an opera singer, it's, you know, thankfully, the opera gods have been kind to me. And, you know, I'm forever grateful that I've had the opportunities to share a part of me with so many people in so many different countries as well.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is touring. Do you enjoy that?
You know, David, I almost enjoy touring as much as I love singing.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So visiting different countries and having an opportunity and singing out of extraordinary theatres as well, opera houses.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating just to see even how different people in different cities respond to the same music. You know, and how different orchestras play the same music.
Yeah.
And so their cultural influence does come into that. And you have to adjust sometimes your technique, sometimes your delivery, sometimes the staging. You know, for example, if you raise some stagings work for a particular country, but it doesn't translate as well to another, you know. So as an artist, you're always on. You have to be on the ball and respond to how they look at you and how you respond to their concept of you, I guess.
Now, there are so many famous masters that have written operas through the centuries, but all of a sudden you were involved here in Melbourne in a concert form with this guy called Philip Glass. Who was Philip Glass? Philip
Glass is an American composer, a modern American composer, who is famous for his minimalism. Let's just call it that. That's how he describes his music as well.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of repeating patterns, but they're always building. So again, it's like the slowest of all burns, man. You know, it's one of those things where you have to kind of ride it. You know, just the plane climbing to the sky without sudden jerky motions. It just goes and goes, and then suddenly you arrive and go, how did I get here? But the journey was wonderful.
Whoa. So what was the piece that you did to rave reviews?
So the piece that we did was Satyagraha.
Right. And is that the story of?
So it's the time when Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was in South Africa, when he was formulating the ideas of what eventually came to be known as Satyagraha, which was the Indian struggle for independence.
Right. And you play Gandhi?
I played Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, yes.
Fantastic. What was that like, and what language was it in?
So it was in the language of Sanskrit, which is classical Indian language.
Yeah, which is perfect for you.
I guess, which which is not spoken anymore, but it's still all of classical Indian religious texts and even Buddhist texts are written in Sanskrit.
Right. Okay. And like in a concert form. How did you find that? Did you find that, like when you were asked to do it, did you think, wow, this is so different to everything else I'm doing, but what an opportunity, what a great chance?
To be honest, David, I think I can say, with hand on my heart, I think it's the most important work I've ever done because of the message.
Yep.
The music aside, the music is gorgeous, but to play one of my all-time heroes in Mahatma Gandhi, and to present his message in such a beautiful way. I mean, beautiful is not the right word for it, but it was just the way it all comes together. This opera chronicles when M.K. Gandhi became Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma meaning a great soul, and
yep.
You can analyze that word in many different ways, but it really just means that a person who is deeply connected with their convictions, and the convictions are not just, oh, I like this color red, so I'm going to tell everybody that this color is red, and that's my conviction. But it's a bit more subliminal than that. It's about believing who you are, trusting who you are, but then also doing something that is right by society, because you are as much a part of society as society is a part of you. There's a famous quote that I'd like to share with all of you, is that when a drop of water loses its identity, it transforms into the ocean.
Hey.
One of those things. And,
yep. Beautiful.
And Mahatma Gandhi embodied that.
Yep. Yep.
He didn't ask anybody to follow him.
Yep.
He was convinced that what was happening in India and what was happening also to the people in South Africa was not the right thing. But he chose the way of non-violent civil disobedience because he did not want to get down to the level of the perpetrators, I guess. And the struggle for freedom would be through peaceful means.
Mm. Now, the orchestra that backed you, it wasn't a typical orchestra per se, because what was missing?
So we didn't have any percussion,
yeah,
and we didn't have any brass either. Because again, in Philip Glass's words, percussion and brass were too much of a heavy-handed expression for what he was trying to...
The beautiful insight to pull that out. Yeah. When you told me about that a few weeks back, I was impressed, and I thought, because it would be the most sweeping, wonderful sound of the violins.
Yeah, that's the soundscape that he created.
Yeah.
And the crescendi and the diminuendi, the growing and the diminishing of sounds, is all done with strings and woodwinds only.
Yeah, fantastic. But all is, okay, that's finished. But it's a one night only. I actually mentioned to you when I interviewed you on radio the other week, why aren't you going on tour with this? But maybe it will because of the success of it.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing work. I think it's something that should be shared more because it opens up an inquiry in a very non-judgmental way, I guess,
Yeah.
So I hope we can do it again.
Yeah. But the only problem is, and a lot of our audience wouldn't be aware of this, is that Opera Australia works so far in advance.
Yes.
It's often a few years in advance, and you would know probably, I don't know, that you might know something that you're doing next year. Do you already know? An opera you're doing next year? You don't yet? You do, but you can't say.
I don't know. I have no idea, guys.
But that is the problem, trying to slot it in to the busy schedule that you have, because all of a sudden you're going out on a national tour soon with Barbara Seville. An amazing. I love that opera. It's a wonderful opera.
So do I. It's one of my favorite roles to sing.
Yeah.
Il Conte di Almaviva. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and and such a famous opera too, isn't
Yes.
it? But there are so many famous operas. Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing about it. You know, like, how do you feel about, a lot of the aging population that love opera? But, like, all of a sudden here you are, you're a young man, and, like, you're going to be a great attraction for younger people wanting to go to the opera to see somebody like you. Do you feel that pressure?
Well, it's not really pressure as such. I mean, it's more, again, we'll have to go on a bit of a tangent here. Right?
Yeah, off you go.
Thank you. I was in France in 2020, what year are we in? 2023?
Yep.
2022, at the end of the November and December. And I played 18 arenas to a total of 60,000 people there or thereabouts. And that was across France, Switzerland, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And the group that I was touring with is called ERA, and it's a concept that was developed by a French composer called Eric Lévy, and we had a band of amazing musicians. We had Rob Harris and Paul Turner from Jamiroquai, Jed Lynch from Peter Gabriel, Sting, Nicolas Montazot, who is an amazing French film composer, and of course Eric Lévy himself. And I was the operatic tenor for that. And the music is rock and roll, but it's also new age, and we traveled with the string section as well. So it was a real mishmash of classical meets rock and roll meets heavy metal meets whatever. And I looked at the audience and I thought, why can't these people come to the opera? Because they're enjoying the music.
Yep.
The music was adapted from operas like La Forza del Destino, from Carmina Burana, and all, things that are considered as classical works. And I think it was probably accessibility in the end. The presentation of all of that music in a rock and roll form was probably more appealing to the common punter down the street.
Yep.
Whereas the opera is always viewed as a bit of an exercise where you have to dress a certain way and you have to act a certain way. The champagne has to be held a certain way. But it's not what it's about.
No.
Opera deals with real people, with real problems every day.
Yep.
So I think for opera to be accessible, and this is purely my opinion, there are people that are, much more qualified than I am to make opera appeal to a wider audience. But I think there needs to be something that tells people, especially in a country like Australia, that, hey, it's not all that different. It's like going to a musical. And I did a musical last year as well with Anthony Warlow, Titanic, and the crowd that attended Titanic and the crowd that comes to Il Barbiere di Siviglia or Tosca or La Bohème or, Forza del Destino, Rigoletto, there is a distinct difference in the audience in the way and you can tell it by just looking at how they sit in the theatre and all of that. And everything is equally valid, but I think we need to be able to attract that audience and go, well, this is another type of art form which you can switch off, which you can get in the theatre and switch off for a while, and it will still tell you a story.
Yep, yeah. But I think it's happening though, and Opera Australia are leading the way a bit with on Sydney Harbour.
Yes.
The big productions. Have you done one of them yet?
I only did Aida when I was in the chorus.
Only that was
2015, yeah. That was the only time I was involved. But yeah, that's a great spectacle.
Yeah, and here in Melbourne at My Music Bowl, they often do like opera in the bowl. So it's starting to have that sort of like inroads a bit, and as you mentioned, Pavarotti. Like how he became such a superstar, and the three tenors, like they're selling, like millions of albums and huge crowds everywhere they went.
Yeah, I think Luciano Pavarotti, just on his own, has done more for the opera business, through his concerts and what he did with Pavarotti and Friends as well. Single-handedly, there was a resurgence in opera because of the three tenors, and he was in the center of it all, and you could just tell by looking at his interviews, like he had a very charming and a very charismatic way of explaining things to people, which drew them in. And the opera is not esoteric, I can go and enjoy it. And people tell you, like in Italy, it's different in Europe than it is out here, in the Anglosphere in general. Like in Rome, you could be in a taxi and the taxi driver will sing all of Rodolfo from La Bohème.
Whoa, whoa.
But they grow up with it.
Of course.
You know, and it's such a big part of their culture.
Yeah.
But even there, you know, there's some. It's hard to attract a younger audience. I guess it's because that opera being such an art form that combines so many different emotions and so many different disciplines of Western classical art forms, that it takes people a certain time to be able to embrace all of that and go, well, this is the ultimate expression for it. So you need to have certain, I guess, emotional and some sort of maturity, I guess, because when you're 15, 16, 17, you're just too busy jumping off trees, man.
Yeah, true. But hold on, I think that the baton should be handed to you. You could be the next Pavarotti, you know, who, you know, is going to change the world, you know, and Opera Australia is the perfect vehicle for you. I'm speaking out of school here, totally, but you know, like, there's opportunities for you, especially considering with your rock background as well. You know, like, have you thought that you might want to take it to another level, your opera voice? Well,
I mean, it really depends on what the company's objectives are and what they want to do. Because again, you know, you're a drop in the ocean. And, you know, coming back to the previous analogy and the quote and everything, you got to work with what you got.
Yep.
And if the agenda is to kind of try and attract new people, then, like, I mean, I'll try and do the best that I can to the best of my abilities. I mean, I know what I can do as a performer. And if I need to spruik the horn, then I'm just always happy to do it. But
what about the fact that you're Indian born? Do you think that, you know, like, that is such well, you know, like the first Indian-born opera singer to be with Opera Australia? You know, like, that's a real feather in your cap, isn't it? Well, it's unusual, I guess. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm a musician first, a human being who's become a musician, I guess. Oh, but unfortunately, you know, society pulls us in that way, and you know, like, and with the huge Indian populations, especially here in Melbourne as well. Yes. You know, like, are they aware of you as an opera singer? I really don't know. The thing with India is that India already has so many different types of classical art forms, and then you have Bollywood to go up against. Oh, yeah. I mean, you look, that'll be the thing, you know, if somehow something happens where opera is able to enhance a Bollywood movie, or at least give another form of expression, I think then we're onto something. Yeah. But how it's done, the execution is all that matters, you know. Yeah. It needs to be done in a very stylish, very classy way. Yeah, why not? I mentioned earlier that Barbara of Seville's coming up. And I find it really interesting, and I'm sure our audience will as well. How long are you in rehearsals for an opera, a famous opera like that? You're taking it on the road, travelling all around Australia with it. How long do you rehearse? It depends again. If it's a brand new production, then I think it's 6 weeks. And it depends on company to company. But I think a revival is only 3 weeks. So 3 weeks? Yes. Because most people have already performed it, is that right? It's plenty, really. Yeah. I mean, I've staged operas with a week's worth of rehearsals, and when the first time you meet the conductor and you're in costume with all the props is on opening night. Whoa! Yeah, but I mean, that's how it works in bigger theatres like that, you know. And not naming any theatres, yeah, that's the kind of the system. That's how quick it is. The turnaround has to be that quick. Right. Okay. So that's why touring. But wouldn't there be, you know, like props going in all directions? You would have to navigate that each city you go to. Yeah, and you know, that's where the stage management and, you know, the mechanists and the crew come into play. And I have to say, they are the most hardworking people of everyone. Yeah. Because they make every theatre seem like the last theatre you were in. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And it's our job just to stand there and, you know, sing something that we already know. Yeah.
And even then, singers are like, oh, well, I can't do this, I can't do like, just do it, man.
Yeah, exactly. Do you love all that though? You know, like all the wonderful drama of sets and different cities, and I can tell you do, just the way you were speaking. You know, like there's an excitement of what you do and performing, you know, getting up on that stage and going, yeah, it doesn't matter if all of a sudden something falls down behind me, who cares? Just, you know, soldier on.
I get to be someone else, you know, it's
Hey.
like all of that, you know, even with rock and roll when I was doing it, and every time I was feeling something really, I was feeling really emotional in a good way or a bad way, I'd write a song about it, you know.
Yeah.
It was the ultimate outlet.
Yeah.
And that's what the arts does for you. And I you know, sort of say this is that I'm not going to go into the sport versus art debate, but sport unites people to stand apart, but art inspires us to be different.
Hey, there you go.
It's one of those things that, you know, I think art education and to encourage people to be arty-farty is such, it's so important for mental health that it can't be understated. Because you can really be yourself, or you can be no one, or you can be someone else through expression of what makes you, you know. Yeah, sorry, I'm blabbering on a bit.
But also going, you know, like you as a performer, but then me as an audience, losing yourself for an hour or two, you know, like being with incredible music just washing over you. And with incredible sets and costumes and you know, like, which is a treat to the eye to go to a lot of these productions these days because of the way technology has moved so quickly. It can be a lot more lavish than what it was, say, although 100 years ago they were pretty lavish too, weren't they?
Yeah, well, probably more, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, all of that is a part of it, right? And as an audience member, you might be going through something in your life and you see something happening on stage or in the movies or whatever, and you don't have a label for it or you don't have a word for it. But suddenly you see something transpire and it fills in the gap for what the word that you've been searching for. Like that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And you tell me that story and you've told it in so many ways, and then you identify with the character. I mean, that's the beauty of, you know, just live shows and art in general,
Thank you. It's been a wonderful interview. We could talk for another half an hour or more, but unfortunately we're running out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
A pleasure for me as well.
And I can't wait to see you on stage real soon.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you for watching. I'm David Hunt. You've been watching The Art Hunter, and we'll be back again next week. See ya.